We've got some more folks coming in.
Oh,
Welcome,
need my
everyone.
buds.
I'm going to kick us off and just wanted to welcome everyone to the first ARC speaker series. So, this is a new project for the Agricultural Resources Committee. We are hoping to pilot a quarterly speaker series exploring different topics that have code relations. And the purpose of these presentations is really to give folks more clarity and more opportunity for discussion on aspects of code that are a little can be a little confounding sometimes. So really providing folks with the tools. I'm Pauline Chiquet too from the San Juan Islands Conservation District. I'm also the ARC Outreach Chair. And today's topic is CUFA, Current Use Farm and Ag. And we have John Colseth here from the assessor's office. And I'll let John introduce himself in just a second. And we will have a presentation from John to start, followed by a Q&A session where folks can ask any questions that they would like to John. The session is an hour, but we have allocated some time after if there are remaining questions. So John and I and some others will be around till about 12:30. And during the meeting, I would request that, especially during John's presentation, everyone remain on mute. And then during the question and answer session, when you have a question, feel free to go off mute. If you have questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that and we can ask those to John as we go. So without further ado, John, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Well, thanks, Pauline. I appreciate the introduction. I will just get right into it because there's a lot we could talk about this for days and days. And my resume is kind of boring. I have been in the office for um, what since 2004. I started in the office in February of '04. And I've been the assessor for this is the last year of my third term, so 12 years. Um, and we have a current use administrator, that's Bill Shanks. He does all the current use and all the designated forest land. So there are two of us in the office. I did it before Bill was hired for a short period of time, right when I moved from chief deputy to the assessor spot. So there are two of us in the office that can handle most questions, although Bill is certainly the expert now, and I would defer complicated questions to him. But other than that, oh, and I also wanted to say, if you have questions, Pauline, just interrupt me. I'm happy to respond to questions on the spot. Sometimes that's better for folks, but I'll just leave it to you. Okay, now I think if I just pick share my screen, it will he's unfortunately Bill's. I see a note here about Bill. He can't be here today, which is why I'm doing it. Um, I think if I just pick the share icon, it'll show my screen. How about that? Does it show big with San Juan County logo in the middle?
Yes, we see it.
Fabulous. Okay. Well, I will just launch off here. I think this is about a half an hour presentation, but interrupt me as you want to, and we'll move from there. There we go. Okay. So this the all of the current use is based on the Washington State Constitution. So it's a state program, and it was enabled by the Constitution. And back in 1968, the Constitution was revised to say that we are supposed to value property at its highest and best use. And the Constitution allows the legislature to pass laws carving out a special group of property and allows it to be taxed on its current use. So the highlight there is based on the use to which the property is currently applied. So that's where the term current use comes from. And then the legislature passed the Open Space Taxation Act in 1970. And one of my predecessors, Paul Dossett, was always very happy to explain that this act in 1970, the legislature that was meeting at that time had a especially long session, and the majority of both houses, one was Democrat and one was a Republican group, and they passed this by a majority. So it's well established in the law and probably is not going anywhere. So the application process, I'll just roll right into that. It is a 3-year process. You apply to the office with all the paperwork. The entire packet has to be delivered to our office before December 31st. And then we will review them as they come in and as we have time, and make a determination before May 1st of the following year. And then we set the values that year for a tax benefit in the following year. There is an application fee that's due also at the time of the application. That is now $550, and that covers the most of the review work that Bill does. There's some recording fees in there also. That is a county fee, and it's paid to the county. It's not paid to the assessor's office, but it varies across the state, and every county has their own fee, and some of them are thousands of dollars. It is supposed to reflect the cost to our office of reviewing this packet for individuals. So that's where that number comes from. The documentation that we're going to be looking for is this application, which is a Department of Revenue form. It's the same form in every county. And we'll also be looking for a farm management plan. That is not a term that you will find in the rules, but I think every county calls the additional documentation the farm management plan. It has just sort of taken on a colloquial term for all of us, and it's based on the information that the law wants us to collect and look at. Some of it is on this form. The second page here covers the income and some of those other things. In the farm management plan, we're going to want to see a description of the use that you want to put the property to and have been putting it to. We want to see a map of the property, including the soil information. You can get that from either the USDA or from our website. We want to see an income history, and we want to see an acknowledgement that the applicant has read the rules and understand the rules, because there are as with everything, there are benefits and burdens, and the burden is that there are costs if you come out of the program. And so we want everyone to understand the liability that they're signing up for. The standards, they vary for the size of the property. If it's 20 acres or more, it needs to be devoted primarily to the production of livestock or agricultural commodities for commercial purposes. And the rules define commercial agricultural purposes as use that demonstrates the owner or lessee is engaged in and intends to obtain a profit by producing an agricultural product. So the shorthand is that you need to demonstrate an ongoing commercial agricultural production with an intent to make a profit. So it's very different from the other acreages. If it's 20 or more, what you need to show is an intent to make a profit. And you can imagine, I mean, ourselves in England have been arguing for centuries over what it means to intend to kill someone. So proving intent is it can be kind of a subjective thing. And one of the first things that we would look for is a Schedule F. If you are intending to make a profit, there's a pretty good chance that you are filing a Schedule F with the IRS that describes your profit and loss from a farming activity. If it is 5 to 19 acres, the law says you need to produce gross income. So the other one is an intent to profit. This one is just gross income. So without looking at the expenses, you need to show income that is $200 or more per acre per year for 3 of the 5 years preceding the application. And that is the ongoing standard. If the property has been in the program since 1993, the standard is $100 or more per acre per year. If it's less than 5 acres, the gross income is a lump sum. It's just $1,500 or more per parcel per year for 3 of the 5 calendar years before the application. And the same rule grandfathers in this acreage too at $1,000 or more per parcel if you've been in since 1993. I threw in this definition at the end after talking to John yesterday and the Food Hub. The law defines gross income from agricultural uses to include the wholesale value for products that are donated to nonprofit food banks. So that it's one of the very few exceptions to having money come into your hands, that if it is donated, the wholesale value does count toward those income requirements. Some of the other uses that qualify the property or qualify acreage on the property is any part of it that's considered incidental use. So if it is not incompatible with ag use, you can add up to 20% of the acreage that's qualified as being used for agricultural purposes, and that can be included. Integral home sites, if the property is 20 acres, then you are allowed to include the home site if the home is central to or inherent in the use or operation of the farm. A relatively new thing, well, maybe a decade old, equestrian use is now allowed. So stabling, training, riding, clinics, those kinds of things with horses, that is now allowed. It used to be that there had to be a product coming out of the property, and the legislature recognized equestrian use now, and so that's a nice thing. Other things, some odd, or I should say out of the box production is Christmas trees, vineyards, fruit trees, anything that you will harvest within 7 years. So it has a longer than a 1 year term is also allowed to be considered in the programs. I am just really struggling with trying to find the advance. There we go. Horticulture, this is also a relatively new thing. So plants that are grown in the ground or in containers will qualify for the program unless you are storing or selling plants purchased from someone else for retail sale. Some of the nuances of that is if it's less than 5 acres, you can't set aside more than 25% of the property for retail purposes. It's at least 75% of it has to be used for the plants and not for the retail sales section. And something that's I think is really odd, but it is in there. If the area is paved and more than 20% of the area is paved, then that doesn't qualify. I don't know why that is so specific, but it is in there. We do a periodic review, and Bill's schedule follows our normal inspection schedule in the county. So this year we're doing the west half of Orcas and Waldron. And what happens during the review period, this periodic review is Bill will send out a questionnaire that confirms that you're doing all the things that the rules require you to do in order to stay in the program. And he'll be looking for documentation. I mentioned the Schedule F. That's probably the first thing that he would want to see. Receipts to show what you've purchased, why you purchased it, what you sold. And if it is 20 acres or more, we'll try to determine if there's an intent to make a profit. It is the owner's responsibility to let us know if there's a change, if you have stopped farming or moved or changed some acreage or something like that. You're supposed to let us know within 60 days of any change. Another time we'll review, this is really kind of the most common, is when there's a transfer of interest. If a person wants to sell the property to another owner, and the new owner wants to continue in the program, then this will trigger our review of it. And it comes from this real estate excise tax affidavit. There are two questions that we ask. One is it eligible to continue? So has the seller maintained the property in its farm status and done what they said that they were going to do? And if that is true, then we determine that it is eligible to continue, and it's up to the new buyer to accept the responsibility. Now they are picking up, because it is a continuation, they are picking up the past liability of taxes, even for periods from before they owned it. And so that's why this is a big deal. And we spend a lot of time making sure that everybody understands what's required of the new owner. And so if the new owner wants to continue, they need to sign the notice of continuance. And there is a little block on this real estate excise tax affidavit that that allows for that. That's the notice of continuance. And the owner will sign that at the bottom, saying that, yes, they understand the rules, and yes, they do want to continue. We will ask them for, if it's in a farm program, we will ask them to describe their own farm, because it's not the Shanks farm anymore, it's the Culseth farm. And so we want the new owner to describe how they're going to use the property. Removal, if the triggering events that will cause a property to be removed is if our office decides that it no longer meets the criteria. So during one of those reviews, whether it's a periodic review once every 6 years, or when there's a transfer of interest, if we decide that it's not meeting the criteria anymore, we will remove it. If a new owner does not sign the notice of continuance, that will cause removal. And then maybe an obvious one is if the owner asks for it to be removed, we obviously will remove it for that reason too. The cost of removal, as of last September, it is a 4-year back tax payment. It used to be a 7-year back year, 7 years back, and now it's only 4. And that's kind of a nice change, plus interest, plus a 20% penalty of that entire amount. If it has been in the program for 10 years and the owner asks to come out of the program, then there is no penalty on that. And the cost also will include a recording fee. Exceptions, if those triggering events happened, you can transfer to a conservation agency that will avoid the removal. If you apply for reclassification, say from farm to farm conservation, or if the property has become overgrown with trees and you have decided to switch to a designated forest land program, you can reclassify to that, and that will stay the removal until that application has been approved or denied. Also, if the program has been in since 1993, and there's a death of one of the owners that has at least a 50% interest, an heir can sell it within 2 years and not pay the removal fees. What happens when it is removed? The first thing you'll get from us is a notice of intent to remove. It's an official letter that's sent by certified mail, and there's a 30-day period to cure that. We will explain that it doesn't. We've determined it's not meeting the criteria any longer, and there's a 30-day period to explain why that's not right. That it is in fact still meeting all the classification requirements, and Bill will review all of that. And sometimes that notice of intent just gets thrown in the trash after that 30-day period if we didn't get paperwork or Bill has misinterpreted something or whatever reason. There is a 30-day window to review that. At the end of that 30 days, we will send a notice of removal. And then there's a 30-day period after that to pay the additional tax, interest, and penalty that is calculated on the notice of removal. I mentioned before there's a couple of other options. One is to apply for reclassification into another program. The other one is to appeal. If you disagree with the office's decision, you can appeal that decision, whether it's the removal decision or a denial of an application. Both of those decisions are appealable. The first layer is to the Board of Equalization, and they are a local group. It's just that they hear all of the hearings on value appeals and current use DFL appeals. That's the first place to go. If either party is not satisfied with their decision, then you can move on to the State Board of Tax Appeals in Olympia. There are two options there. It can be informal or formal. If it's formal, it's full legal paper and typically lawyers and a much more, dare I say, formal event compared to the informal. The informal is really more like the local Board of Equalization. And if the appellant chose the formal avenue and they are not, and either party is not satisfied with that determination, then the final level of appeal is to the San Juan or the Thurston County Superior Court. So Thurston County, because that's Olympia and where the State Board of Tax Appeals is. And then that is the final decision there. The resources that are out there, there is a lot of information out there. The laws and rules that govern it are in the RCW, so the Revised Code of Washington. It is 8434. And the Washington Administrative Code that is drafted by the Department of Revenue is also out there. So that's WAC 45830. The WACs the WACs are designed to explain the RCWs, the laws, in more English fashion. The laws are not always easily read, and so the Department of Revenue has established this code that is hopefully more easily read. There also, if you go to our website, there's a lot of information there, a lot of links. I put it up there on the screen. There are application forms there on the website. There's a sample farm management plan you can look through to see what's there. I put my name and email down and Bill's name and email. You can also go to the Department of Revenue. There is a great publication called Understanding the Open Space Taxation Act at the Department of Revenue. And that is supposed to be linked on our website. I looked at it this morning and the link is broken, but we'll get that fixed. But that is there. And that's where I am. That's a pretty map of all of the property that's getting a special tax consideration. So there's government exempt is in red. There's farm, timber, DFL, open space, farm conservation, and open space, just open space. That's what that map is. All right, I'll shut up for a while. Tell me what questions are out there.
Thanks, John. This was
Yeah,
great.
yeah, you're
Really
welcome.
informative. I might kick us off with a question if that's okay with folks, and then we can either take some local questions or questions in the chat. But my question for you to start is, you mentioned a lot of this is based in the RCW and state code. I'm wondering what wiggle room or leeway we have as a county to interpret the Washington state code.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of, I should say, every time there is an interpretation, it that is up to us. So the legislature has given that to the assessors of the 39 counties to interpret. And you might get a different answer from county to county. I would say that we don't operate in a vacuum, though. We all talk and we all um, bounce things off of other counties and say, what would you do in this situation? We also include the Department of Revenue. There's a person there who has quarterly meetings and with all of the current use administrators. So it is interpreted by this office, and I suppose at the end of the day, it's my decision over bills, over anybody's, and the law allows for that appeal process. And and then you can go on to the Board of Equalization or the state board and say, we think Colseth is absolutely wrong, and make your pitch, and they might interpret it differently.
Thanks. And we've got
Mhm.
one from Kathy in the chat who asks, who is currently on the advisory committee of the RCW 84.34.145?
And I'm also wondering I'm wondering, John, if you can um stop screen sharing so then we can
Yes,
kind of see
yes, sure,
everybody better.
sure. Yep. Um, can I? Big red. Yeah, how about that?
Awesome.
Yeah. Um, the who is on the board? I do not know who's on the board. Is that the Agricultural Resources Advisory Group, something like that?
No, it's separate. There, a while ago, there was people like, I remember Tor Black was on it,
Yeah,
Catherine was on it, Sarah Ross was on it.
Peggy
Uh,
Bill.
just a five-person. They met directly with the assessor. Yeah.
Yep, yep. It's that that is not our um what the council needs to appoint those people. And my what I think happened is when there becomes a problem between the agricultural community and the government, that that group tends to coalesce, and the council appoints that group, and then they start to um, give us advice, and that I think that as those disagreements sort of fade, then the group fades. I know that at one point there were it still had Tor's name on it as an active member, and he had passed away. So it is I think it is really stale right now.
Mhm.
But if you're interested at all in putting that back together, well, Faith may know, or the council. I would talk to the council
Mhm.
and say, please put this group back
Mhm.
together.
Mhm. Yeah, it's currently not functioning, and John's right. It needs to be kind of reinstated by council.
I think if I could say, um, we please call us if you have any questions or problems or any kind of issue, I think that it is a faster way to get to the finish line by just calling us and talking to us. But I understand that sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes there's a frustration level. Sometimes people in the government aren't listening. And I think that that mechanism is in the statutes for that kind of situation. And so I take it as a credit that that group is not functioning, because I think that there's open dialogue now. Anyway.
Next question in the chat is from Bruce. Can you talk a bit more about the reclassification of a farm in CUFA to farm conservation program?
Yes, I can talk some about it. So you would be moving, the assessor's office handles the CUFA, but the council handles farm conservation. And so it is a move out of our office and over to the council. And so I think I know what I'm talking about, but I reserve the right to be wrong. There, the rating, you can get between 30 and 35 points. I think it might be 25 or 30 points in the farm conservation program. And I think it is a strict acreage number. If you're over a certain number of acres, you get this many points. And if you're under a certain number of acres, you get the lower points. And if I remember right, the criteria is it has to be property that was or should have been farmed and has the potential to go back into farm at some point in the future. There was a fuse on that once you go into the program. I think it is a 20-year period, and then you either have to come back into farm or put a permanent conservation easement on it, or come out of the program at the end of that 20-year term. Does that answer your question, Bruce?
Yeah, John, thanks. That's all related to the other programs, open space, that uses the public benefit rating system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious because I remember there was a lot of chatter about the length of time that some counties allow farms to enter that program versus what San Juan County was initially pointed their,
Yep.
regulations towards. So that was the, and the reason I'm asking that is that there's a lot of farms, mine being one of them, that are out there now that, I mean, my wife and I were getting close to that age that, like you, that you're thinking about the big R. You can't flip those sheep anymore, like you used to be able to, and all that other stuff. And so there's limited options. I mean, you can go look for, conservation easement through various opportunities with, the American Farmland Trust, the land bank, along with the preservation trust, and those are nice issues. But there's always that well, that's not going to work. We got to do something else. So that's kind of why I asked that question.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what this was designed for, was to allow farms like yours move into another period of management and not have to pay those taxes, those back taxes. At the end of the day, we used to tell people with a 7-year back payment of taxes, we used to tell people that if you've been in the program 10 years, you are ahead. You will have paid less tax at the end of that 10-year period, even with the repayment of those 7 years. And so now with it down to a 4-year back payment, I don't know. I don't think it's the end of the world to just step out of the program and tell the government to leave you alone and just pay the tax that you would have paid anyway out of the program. That's obviously an opinion.
Yeah, the issue with that, though, is that there are just recently there's been several farms that have been on the market for exorbitant prices, which basically prices the work hard middle class individual who wants to farm out of the picture, because it costs so much to do that. And in our situation, our farm's been in CUFA since 1974, so we have a lot of history with that. But the other thing that enters the picture is that we're all really concerned about the preservation of farmland. Our farm has been in existence since 1900 with the Botsford family, part of the Peter Kirk, establishment of farming in the county. So it's got a historical significance to it. There are other farms that fall into that same area. So it's like if we're all of a sudden seeing all this transition of these farmlands, it seems like we have limited protections. And there's other issues that I'll
Yep,
bring up
yep.
later, but I didn't want to take all the time here and let others get their questions in.
Thanks, Bruce and John. Faith, you had a hand at one point. Do you want to add
Oh,
anything?
no, Bruce I got to it.
Okay. Awesome. I'll move on to John's question then. Is this map that was just on the screen for San Juan County tax parcels? And he's meaning the last map you had on the screen with, I'm assuming it's all the different parcels in each.
Yes. And sorry, what is the question about that map?
Is that map available online?
Oh, yes. I think it is. If it isn't, I will get it online. I know there's at least an old version, but I will put that on our website. And John, I can email it to anybody. Pauline, if you want me to email it to you, whatever. You tell me.
Great. Maybe we can.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, John.
yeah, I'd love to get an email of that if you could, John.
Sure.
And I was going to
Yeah.
say, after this meeting, we can send, John, if you're okay with it, maybe your slides with that
Sure.
photo of the map. This
Yep.
meeting's also being recorded too, so we'll have those resources up on the Agricultural Resources Committee website. But I can send a follow-up email to all the participants with that information.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
great.
Thank you.
Yep. Welcome.
Next question is from Lee. Would you please describe the different rates for the various classifications?
The rates for the classifications, meaning the taxable value, the taxed value of acreage. Is that the question?
Yeah, the difference that, hi, everybody. The tax savings, I don't know what is the difference from one classification to another versus on the property tax savings?
I will start looking for that. I know that it's hundreds of dollars an acre instead of thousands of dollars an acre. So the farm, if it depends on the soil, and there's a whole productivity that's been developed by the state, and we don't have we have no input in that. And believe me, we would have some if they gave us an opportunity. But depending on the soil, once you're accepted into the program, then the acres that are in a certain type of soil get a certain value, and acres that are in a different type of soil get a different value. My recollection is it runs somewhere between $200 and $600 per acre, depending on soils. And that is a discount, from thousands of dollars an acre, maybe depending on what residential property is selling for.
And then I was trying to ask, and how is that different for the timberland and the open space land?
Yeah, so timber and designated forest land are both valued on their stumpage value, and that is another chart that is developed by the Department of Revenue every year, and that goes from hundreds of dollars an acre to tens of dollars an acre. I think one of them is $1 an acre. One of them is, I think it's around $10, $17 an acre, maybe something like that. But you pay when you cut the timber, you pay the excise tax I think it's based on board feet. That doesn't have anything to do with our office, but that was the thought, is that if the harvester is going to pay for the lumber with an excise tax, then we're going to give them a deeper discount on the property tax. And open space, Bruce mentioned San Juan County adopted the Public Benefit Rating System, PBRS, and not all counties use that. And that is run through the DCD, Department of Community Development, and they have a standard. It's a checklist, and they go out. There's a group that goes out and evaluates the land and says, "You've got bluebirds, you get this many points. You are this far from, you're this visible by a major road, you get this many points," and they add those up, and the points at the end is converted to a straight discount on your taxes, on the taxable value. So if you get 50 points, that's a 50% discount on value.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question in the chat is from Sarah. A lot of island hayland in CUFA is so degraded that it is no longer worth haying and cannot yield profit. Would your recommendation be to transfer land like this into the farm conservation program while investments are made to restore fertility?
Oh boy, I can't advise you that. I know what you're talking about, though. Island hay is not the best hay in the state for sure. But I would talk to your conservation district and ask them how to restore some of that hay. I know that there are ways to do it. I know that our office is open to understanding that that's what you're going through. If there are a couple of years where you just let it lay and try to develop it, put in cover crops or whatever to help rejuvenate the soil. There's an open conversation about that to allow you to stay in the program until you can get back to producing hay. I don't have a good answer for that one. Bruce has got his hand up, though. I bet he's got a great answer.
Oh, no. Here we go, John. You and I and others have talked about this a long time, and I just want to bring this up again. Nowhere in the RCW or the WAC is there mention of soil fertility. And that's become a big issue out here because we are, one, in a geographically challenged area. Two, every input that we have to get hold of at this point, if it can't be produced on the farm because of the lack of fertility already, because of our soil types and the multiple types we have, inputs have to come on the ferry, like everything else. So the cost rises for any type of, fertility or soil fertility management. And so what's happened, as Sarah points out exactly, is that there are a lot of parcels in open space, current use farm and ag, that are basically depleted because they have been essentially mined of their carbon or the utility of their fertility over 20, 25 years. And we know that through some of the science-based soil testing processes we had back in 2010, where we actually had over 88 different soil tests provided by different users within the county through the district. And what it pointed out was that the majority of people who had gardens were killing their fertility because they were over inputting. But yet, if you looked at the pasture lands, the fertility of pasture lands, grazing lands, which is, a good percentage of our production because we're basically livestock based out here, was failing. And so I know you and I have talked about this a little bit. It's like, why is there no incentive within the RCW or the WAC to include the mention of soil fertility? And the big question was, how could we address that on a level that you as an assessor and other assessors in other counties can get their hands on and say, yeah, this makes sense, that we need to think about the future of our society and our soil health is based upon that. So I think one of the answers that came up recently was to work through the Washington Association of Conservation Districts and get a statewide memorandum through that group saying that this is important and we need to go to our legislators and do something about it. So I just wanted to throw that out, that and having spent some 10 years working on this issue on my own farm and the lands that I lease through a soil health lease, I call it, it is possible. But what you end up doing is finding that the cost of doing that has to become a means And the bottom line of your spreadsheet says you've got to include that because your farming is a business and your soil fertility is part of that business. And without it, it fails. And there's a lot of people that don't play that game. And I think that's why we've gotten ourselves in this situation. So it's kind of a very interesting conundrum that I think a lot of us need to pay more attention to. So I'll be quiet now.
And Sarah, you've got your hand up. Maybe you wanted to clarify your question as well, too.
I did, or just expand on my
Mhm.
question. I'm actually asking not as a landowner because as a landowner, I've got total control over how I can restore fertility in my soils by grazing animals, and that's what I'm doing on my farm. I'm asking as actually as a lessee, because we have access to a lot of acreage that's in this category where it's not worth cutting hay on it anymore. And putting animals on the land will solve the problem over time. Bale grazing sheep and, moving them rapidly with electronet panels. Like we know that that works, but it takes time. It's not a quick fix like dumping a bunch of chemical fertilizer on it would be. And so for landowners that are in that category where they're like, yeah, they're kind of their backs are to the wall and staying in CUFA because they can't get anybody to hay it anymore. And it's not worth it for me to pay for that lease because it's frankly pretty crap grazing right now. But we know we can get there over a period of years. And I just wish that we could advocate for something like what exists with the DOE, where if you have a water right that you're not going to use for a few years, where you can kind of ask to set the land aside, and there's the intent to pick it up and keep using that program again. And because the goal is, yeah, make that land fertile enough that it can have a hay crop come off of it. And then we can put animals on in the winter to help restore carbon and organic matter. And just, what would it take to start to move us away from this dollars only kind of mindset? Yeah, that's where my head is.
I completely understand what you're talking about. And I would advise you, you are very well spoken. I would advise you to spend some time in Olympia. Take Bruce with you. It's 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 a problem. Well, okay, sorry, I won't pontificate too long, but one of the issues is there are people out there that all they want is a dollar today. And there are other people that are looking for a much longer range management. And that's just going to be person to person. But I completely agree that I think the legislature needs to be convinced that they need to add a new section to the law to address this kind of thing. I don't know. I have become very jaded with the legislative process, but I've also seen some things happen, and I think that it happens through a good idea and well articulated reasoning and perseverance.
Thank you. Okay, Bruce,
Yeah.
hit me as soon as lambing season's done. Going to Olympia.
We got 2 more to go.
We've got Kathy said grow green manures, develop compost strategies. Kathy, do you want to expand on that?
Well, just as far as Bruce was going on, I mean, I think working with organizations like the ARC and farmers that are attending what just happened last weekend at the Egg Summit, it would be great if some people from the assessor's office came in there to see what kind of strategies people are utilizing to make our farms more productive, because I think we sort of marginalized food production in this county. And now we're kind of combating solar arrays as a way to make money. And we're kind of like, cutting our nose to spite our face or whatever that thing is, like, utilize, not thinking about calories as an energy source and just looking at power. And so just some of the strategies that people are serious in this county and moving towards bigger things. But then when you come across Bill Shank sometimes, I well, Charles Biedenell's next question was, I mean, when I said that I was grazing, he said, well, I'm not producing money off that part of my property. I'm like, well, I'm grazing my animals. And that became a big bone of contention. So it was like that interpretation part of it, whereas the farm is a unit, not separated into different things. And so growing green manures isn't going to give me money necessarily, but I can apply that in other places to fertilize and do what Sarah Pope wants us to do and what we all want to do. So that kind of integrated farm system and the work that people are doing. And we learn so much. I mean, you learn so much every year at these ag summits that are institutions that are here to help us, like the extension, the conservation, and the ARC. You know, they're really great resources for us. But then it comes down to like, oh, then when you go in front of the assessor's office and you feel like, what am I doing? That's just,
Yeah, yeah. I think the laws are not written very well. There are a lot of things that really limit us in how we administer the program, and there is certainly a tension between the people that are in special tax programs, whether it be a senior citizen or a farm or a forest, that that the dollars that are not paid by those groups are shifted to other people. And so we have a duty to represent both sides there. And so that can be difficult for sure.
right. And that's that public benefit rating, right? Where you're showing public benefit by, and so, yeah, we're not being charged these dollars, but there's public benefit that's generated from our practices, the way I read that.
Yeah, yes, no, that's right. But that public benefit, that's handled by the county council. So they go out, all those people with their clipboards, and they do the rating. That has nothing to do with us. That's they decide that that public benefit is for open space or for farm conservation property. Not farm property is it it's the way the law is written is you have to produce an agricultural product, and that's where that's what we're trying to follow.
But that word intends is really vague.
Sure, yeah, if you're 20 acres or more, that's what I say, trying to figure out what it means to intend to make a profit. I mean, I joke that some people, if somebody did not intend to make a profit and yet they did in fact make a profit, does that mean they don't qualify? I mean, that's silly, but it's, yeah,
Yeah, it just goes to show the one-sidedness of the whole issue is that the intent to make a profit basically throws out the whole public benefit of soil fertility over the long run. Because like I tell a lot of people, and I've told many people this, everybody who sits in this meeting right now is not going to be here in about 50 years. We'll all be gone. But the land
yeah.
that's here, the soil fertility that's here, will either be nourished or will be furtherly decimated. That's the whole issue. That's why what I've worked with that's really worked well is that some of the lands I lease, I don't pay the landowner any money. I pay the soil fertility money because they have a vested interest in that same quality beyond their lifetime, beyond my lifetime. So it's all about the soil. It's not about the money that I'm giving them that goes into the bank. It's not going into a physical bank. It's going into the soil fertility bank. And that's what I think is so important, that we realize that this is one of the take homes that RCWs and the WAC need to include. And it's statewide. Let's face it, it is a big issue. If you read David Montgomery's books, his first book of a classic, Dirt, The Erosion of Civilization, you will find that it's all true. And we got to go there.
I'm just wondering, I'm just looking at the clock and folks who have spoken a lot, if we can maybe keep it like for the last couple minutes of our time, and then we'll have time afterwards. But I just want to make sure that people get their questions answered, and then we can maybe go into more discussion.
Thanks, Faith. And we do have 4 minutes left of the scheduled time, and then we'll go on about a half an hour after that. So I've got Charlie Banky's question in the chat is regarding the $200 profit per acre for under 20-acre parcels. Can the profit be concentrated in a smaller portion of the property, or does each acre need to be in production and showing the profit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's not profit. That profit is for the 20 acres or more. This is gross income. So it's $200 of income, which so you leave the expenses out of the equation completely. It's just money that comes in. And it's an average, so it's $200 per acre as an average. All of the acreage that qualifies, though, has to be in the productive use of the farm, if that makes sense. So you don't have to say, I made $200 over there and I made $200 over here. You can make $50 here and 200 and what am I, 350 over there. As long as the entire operation is producing agricultural products, then you just need the average for the farm. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And I guess an example, if you have a couple acres of forest land that you're lightly using, maybe making wood chips or biochar out of that and utilizing in the farm, would that example work, or does that need to be in forestry?
Yeah, no, well, it depends on how large it is. If it's not more than 20%, it could be considered incidental use and it could be included in the farm as long as what you're doing there isn't incompatible with the farm. So what's incompatible? Tennis courts, I suppose, are incompatible, but a woodlot would not be, or shelter for animals would not be. Using the lumber to build sheds, that's not incompatible with the production on the rest. So if you're not, you can add up to 20% of the acreage and include that in the farm.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
John, I'll jump in with a question too. We've heard from a lot of aging farmers that increasing taxes and just the difficulty of maintaining a farm is more and more it's more and more difficult. And my question is how the program, CUFA program, is linked to the senior discount. Could you talk about that and how farmers
Sure.
who are at the end of their farming career might still be able to receive that senior discount?
Yes, I will say we hate those farms that have both a senior and a farmer because it is so difficult to administer. But I say that with my tongue in my cheek. We have several of those. What we do is we figure out the benefit that the taxpayer would get through the senior program, and we figure out the benefit that they would get through the farm program, and we give them the best benefit of that blend, however it works out. So as a senior, you're allowed up to 5 acres as your home, and the value of that home and the 5 acres is frozen, and depending on your income level, there's a discount on that. So it could be discounted up to 60%. But in a farm, the home site is typically only 1 acre, and so there's that 4 acres that just drives us crazy with the math of it. But we do work that out, and there are several people that are in that situation.
Thanks, John.
Mm.
We've reached the end of our official time, but we'll welcome any more questions and discussions if folks want to stick around, but feel free to leave if you've also got other things going. Faith?
I've got a question about the definition of agricultural commodities, and if a farm is growing something and they are making it into a value-added product before they're selling it, is that allowed? I guess I heard from a farmer who was interested in enrolling in CUFA and was told that because they were growing grain and then not selling it as grain, but selling it as, it was turned into a value-added product before they were selling it, that they couldn't use that as income. And so I'm just wondering if that is kind of written in stone from the state, or if that is a place where you have some discretion and ability to work with in your interpretation.
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer because I don't know specifics, and so I'll try to answer it in general terms. And I would say that the law wants a product. It wants something that is sold. And so if there isn't, and the law also explicitly disallows bartering. So you can't count the value of something traded to your neighbor, even though you're
No, this
both
wasn't
using
traded.
that. Yeah,
This,
right. But
this is grain
Yep.
grown, turned into flour or bread, and sold by the farm. Was the interpretation that came through
Yeah.
was because it was turned into bread before it was sold, the farm could not count that as. So it was very definitely sold.
Yeah, the bread was sold, not the
The bread
grain.
was sold by the farm. So the farm was growing the grain. And I guess this is
Yeah.
where it's like, it's really about value added product. So, and I guess with that
Yeah.
definition of agricultural commodity, value add is one of the ways that we can
Yeah.
increase profit. So it's like, is,
Yeah. Well, I would struggle with it because I mean, how do you, so I'm thinking out loud, Faith, for sure, but the value, how do you determine the value? And it seems to me that we would be talking about a wholesale value of that grain, and the law allows a wholesale value of things donated to a food bank, but it doesn't address the wholesale value of things going in. And
yeah.
I mean, can
think
I just speak on that real quick?
Yeah.
It just seems like something like that, you could easily set up a second business, or you could have, your bread business being, and you're selling your commodity then to your bread business, and then your farm is getting that income as a commodity.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would do. I think I would I would set up a bread stand in town and sell it to that group who's baking the bread, and then show those receipts.
And Sarah also held up the wool too, I imagine, similar sort of process for wool.
Another example would be hay.
Yeah. Hay's a good one.
We've got a question in the chat from Lorianne. Farms intent to make income are businesses, and most as protected assets are in LLCs. But if you are a senior and really want the discount to keep farming, you are denied. I was directed to both Stephen and Annie at the San Juan County, I don't know what the SJC.
Assessor's office,
Okay.
probably.
And they could not help.
Yeah, Lorianne, the problem is because it's an LLC. an LLC is not a senior citizen. An LLC is a legal entity, and that's the problem with that.
And this is actually, it's very similar to what we were just talking about. If the, I guess it, so would, in the Lorianne's question, would it depend on if the land was owned by the LLC? Or if so if the land was owned by the person and the LLC had all the farming business, would that
yes,
solve the problem?
I think so. So I should know this, Loriana. You're over 20 acres, I think. And so I'm guessing that you have an integral home site. And so the home site and all the acreage is part of your farm. And I'm thinking out loud again, let me go at it this way. In order to qualify for the senior program, the home and up to 5 acres, it could be 1 acre, but it also can go up to 5, would have to be owned by Lorianne David, not by the LLC. And if that were true, then you could qualify as a senior, as long as your income is below the threshold, then you could qualify for the senior program. And that's that math problem that I say I hate, because I don't know where the break is on what is more beneficial. But, if you want to come in and we can sharpen our pencils and figure that out and see if it's worth doing a boundary line modification and transferring part of the property to you as an individual, we can certainly game that out.
Lorianne, any follow-ups there? Okay, we've got a question from Laura in the chat saying, does the integral home site need to be on the same parcel as the farm, or can it be adjacent to it?
That's one of those specific ones that I would want to look at. The definition of an integral home site is it has to be central to or inherent in the operations. So I'll just throw out some scenarios. If it's a house on the other side of the road and the farm is 20 acres on the opposite side of the road, I don't know the answer to that. I think that would qualify, but I don't know. It does have to be central to or inherent in the operation of the farm.
Doesn't it have to be on the same lot? Like, doesn't it have to
I
be
don't know.
the same
Maybe it does.
tax parcel?
Maybe
Yeah,
it
tax
does.
parcel.
Does it? Thanks, Bruce. I don't know the answer to that one.
No, that's a real tough one, because if you think about it, if that farm on one side of the road has one parcel number and the other parcel that has the homestead on it is on another parcel, then it's obvious that some time ago this parcel was split because the zoning allowed that to happen. So that's a really tough one.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. I'll find out.
Any other questions?
I was wondering if there is a visual component to compliance. Like I've noticed that Orcas Island West, well now this is their year. And so is there a visual compliance, just looking at a farm, if it looks like a farm, quacks like a farm, maybe it's a farm.
Well, I mean, we would want to see, there's definitely some money involved somewhere.
Right,
So
right. I'm
we,
just saying a component of, not absolutely like, oh
yeah,
yeah, that's a
sure.
fine check, off, we're done, but a visual component of the compliance.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Is there?
Yeah, we look at them all I mean, that's why it's part of our 6-year inspection cycle is the appraisers are out in on the property. And if they go out and all the fences are down, then they say, Bill, we don't think this is a farm anymore. It doesn't look like a farm.
Okay.
Yeah, the public benefit rating system also includes points for what they call the view corridor, but that's only good, of course, in the open space portion of land preservation under the CDC.
Jenny has a question in the chat. What is the definition of a farm? Can it be multiple parcels?
Yes, it can be multiple parcels, and I would refer you to those WACs that I mentioned. Even the RCW, I think 8433. I want to say 02020, right at the very top, has a block of definitions, and it talks about what is farm and agricultural land, and it has those different breakdowns by acreage. But it can be multiple parcels, and it can be multiple parcels owned by different family members. You do have to be part of the same family, either through blood or marriage, but all of that can be managed as one operation, and you can put those acreages together in order to get over the 20-acre minimum. And that's all in the statute.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Well, I know somebody will have a question 5 minutes after we quit, so
I'll come call you back. Bye.
Feel free to email me, email Pauline. This isn't the end of a conversation for sure. If you got any questions, let me know.
Kathy, did
Thanks,
you have?
John. Really appreciate it. It's great.
You're welcome,
I
of
think it's a
course.
good idea to have that advisory committee just maybe sometimes in conversation with the assessor and not wait till a huge crisis arise. And I'm wondering if anybody is interested in being on such an advisory.
I think we just had one.
Well, I
And
mean,
maybe
as a
this is the
committee
group,
though,
huh? Yeah,
as a
right.
county appointed, I found that conversation back when Charles Almanac was being very forceful with compliance. And there was a lot of definitions that were flying around that had to be straightened out a little bit.
Yep.
And I was just a observer and a friend to somebody who was on the committee. I found those conversations to be really helpful because they were directly with the assessor and with the compliance person, which would be Bill Shanks.
Well, we don't have anything to do with appointing or moving that board forward. So,
Right.
but I personally, as long as I'm in the chair, I would welcome that. So I would encourage you to talk to the county council and reconstitute it.
Hey, Faith, the ARC could make that request.
Yeah, we definitely could. And it would be good if we went forward with that, knowing that there are people who are interested and willing to be on it. So if you maybe following up on Kathy's question, if you are interested and willing to be on it, maybe put your name in the chat, and it will and it is something that we can bring forward to the ARC and discuss if it's something that folks would think would be a good idea to move forward. I know we have discussed it in the past. So, yeah. And it's been great having John be so willing and open, and so we haven't had the urgency that there has been in the past.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate, like Faith says, your openness and willingness to discuss stuff. This has been great. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation. It's a complicated block of rules for sure.
John, looks like one more question in the chat from Laura. Just to follow up to answer to my question regarding integral home site, is it on page 2 of this document? It looks like it's a document that links to the open space.
Where do I see that? Where can I see that document?
It's in the chat. There's a link there. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, I see it. Hang on. Okay, so it's talking about property that's 20 acres or more.
I think it's on number 6C and D. Probably answers it for me in my context, I guess.
Oh yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh, perfect.
So I'm also
Yeah, no, thank you.
so everyone else could see it, but
Yeah. So right, it says a non-contiguous parcel 1 to 5 acres that is an integral part of the farming operations. Yeah, that's good. So it would qualify then.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Thank
you
you for that. That's perfect. And that flyer that you put up, the Open Space Taxation Act, that's that piece that I said is supposed to be linked through our office, through our website, and that's put up by the Department of Revenue occasionally. Yeah, thank you. Perfect.
All right. Well, thanks so much, John, for taking the time to talk to this group. Really, really great conversation. And thank you to all of you for joining and for asking great questions.
Great.
And thank you to Pauline for having the inspiration and putting it together.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'll send you my slides,
really.
Pauline, right now.
Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.
Yep.
Bye.